Hi, welcome to Jewish Culture and Jewish Awareness. My name is Dustin Hausner. I'm the Jewish Outreach and Program Director at the Wayne YMCA. All our Jewish programming is funded through the Jewish Federation of Northern New Jersey. For those of you who've watched the show before, you'll notice my location's a little different. I'm actually doing this in our sukkah at the Wayne YMCA, which is pretty wonderful. So for those who are celebrating, I hope you're enjoying it. Today we have a wonderful guest, which I'm really excited about. Because not only is her work really intriguing, but also very delicious, as a clue to what we're going to be talking about today. So I would like to introduce our guest today. Her name is excuse me. Her name is Kenden, and she's the founder of Jewish Food Hero. She is a psychotherapist and a vegan. Kenden has a BA from Brown University, an MA in counseling psychology, and a certificate in plant-based nutrition from Cornell University. Kenden has lived and worked for the United Nations and various NGOs in India, Afghanistan, the Dominican Republic of Congo, and Switzerland and Cambodia. So, Kenden, thank you so much for making the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be with you.
Excellent. So let's start off. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, and just for the viewers at home, Kenden is actually very graciously talking to us from abroad. So there is a nice little time difference, and we're going to do our best with the accommodations of the video. So, but Kenden, I would love to hear a little bit more about yourself, the work you do, and what got you interested.
So my name's Kenden, and I now live in Paris, in France, and I'm a counseling psychologist, and I just have a passion for plant-based eating and environmental action, which is my hobby.
Fantastic. So obviously the brand name is Jewish Food Hero. So let me ask, for those who aren't familiar, what is Jewish Food Hero?
So Jewish Food Hero is a blog that I started in 2015. When I was living in Cambodia, and my daughter was, it was actually in 2014, so she was 4. And I started it because I wanted to get healthier plant-based food onto Jewish tables around the world as a way of improving our mental and physical health and helping the environment. And it came about because I had gone to a lot of Shabbat dinners over the years, and I was always kind of struck by what was on the table. And one time in particular, I was at a Shabbat dinner, and I noticed that there were a few women that weren't eating. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that means that the food's not right anymore if people are not eating. So today, in 2020, Jewish Food Hero creates vegan and plant-based cookbooks. So 2 have been published already, and those are the Jewish Food Hero cookbook, which was the first one, which is about menus for 10 menus for 10 Jewish holidays, 10 plant-based menus for 10 Jewish holidays. And the second one was called Feeding Women of the Bible, Feeding Ourselves, which is a project that I loved doing. It was basically taking 20 females from the Hebrew Bible, female characters, and having female rabbis, Jewish female thought leaders write narratives about those women in the Bible. And then for each of the women in the Bible, there are 2 home cooks or chefs, Jewish women, that created recipes for those characters. And that book was for charity, and it was a collaborative project that was just really great to work on. So in addition to that, on the blog now, what I'm really focusing on is sharing community recipes. So that means that people in the community send me their recipes, and then I publish them and write a story about them. And the other thing on the blog that we do a lot is sharing inspiring Jewish quotes. So we just published 57 Ruth Bader Ginsburg quotes to guide us forward. That's the example, but there were other ones that we have, and I like those. And then the other thing we do is we make a few beautiful Jewish props. Like we make an annual Jewish holiday calendar art print. We make some blessing and prayer cards and things like that.
No, those all sound amazing, and certainly that, especially the cookbook you mentioned about the women in the Bible and women rabbis. Yeah. I easily can. We'll talk offline, but I could easily see me getting that for my sister. She would absolutely love it.
Oh, thank you.
But let me ask, because it's interesting when I think of Jewish food. For me, it's a very particular image of what Jewish food is. But depending on where you live around the world, like even Yom Kippur was fairly recently, break fast. Depending on where you're from, the food you associate with break fast is quite different. So I'm curious
Yes.
for you, what makes Jewish food Jewish food?
So I'm going to read this from the document I wrote because I actually talk about this in the next cookbook I just wrote.
Yeah, we would love that.
So I wrote, Jewish food is not easy to define. Some foods are commonly eaten by Jews but have their origins in other cultures, and other recipes created by Jews were eaten by non-Jews as well. Then there are foods traditionally eaten during Jewish holidays and during or after religious rituals, which may have been adopted from surrounding communities. Jewish food also means different things to people in different locations and time periods. For example, today Americans consider bagels to be quintessentially Jewish, while Israelis barely eat them at all. So then I wrote, there's enduring truths that define Jewish food. So those truths are that Jewish food and recipes adhere to kosher laws. Jewish food has always been a multicultural affair because of the Jewish experience of migration. What Jewish people eat depends on where they lived and where their ancestors lived. Shabbat and holidays have had a large effect on Jewish food. Foods which can be prepared in advance and heated up for a long time become popular for Shabbat dishes. Customs relating to specific holidays influence food choices. And not all food considered Jewish today are ancient in origin. So
Yeah.
that's what I wrote, because I also really struggle with that.
No, that's honestly beautiful. That is a beautiful description of Jewish food and Jewish cuisine. Because as you said, for some people, it's quintessential. Some of it is ancient, and some of it is fairly new in perspective. So it's just really fascinating. So I'm wondering, for specifically Jewish Food Hero, the blog you've done and the books you've done, what makes it, compared to other Jewish food cookbooks, which there are quite a number of them, what
Yeah.
makes it, I suppose, unique is a way of phrasing it. What's unique about the type of recipes and things that you have produced, but also have shared with people?
Okay, so I think just as a basic concept, like one of the things about Jewish Food Hero that I want is that one of the things about food in general is food is about social acceptance. And so one of the things about Jewish Food Hero is to try to make plant-based eating patterns acceptable in our community. And so that means that we need to contextualize plant-based eating in our community. And the way that Jewish Food Hero does that is by offering plant-based vegan recipes that can be remakes of Jewish classic recipes, or they could also just be recipes that I'm proposing that they be eaten for Jewish holidays. And then with Feeding Women of the Bible, it was recipes that were inspired by Hebrew female, or the Hebrew Bible, the women in the Hebrew Bible. So for example, there was, let me just come up with an example.
Yeah, please.
So there was a story of Deborah, and the woman that was assigned, this woman named Mitten Lowe, she was assigned this character. She decided to make date balls, which is a very modern American thing, for Deborah because Deborah was sitting under a date tree. So that's not a Jewish food, but we're relating it to our books, our stories, so that it becomes part of what we think is acceptable or is acceptable to us.
Yeah. And I mean, dates, like, for example, obviously, like for Tu B'Shvat Seders and things like that, like dates play a role in our faith and also in our culture. So I think that was really nicely. So to your point, because obviously we mentioned in the very beginning that you're vegan and, you've mentioned plant-based a few times. I'm curious if your focus specifically on plant-based Jewish food was more of something for, like, you were finding recipes and you wanted to share it, if it's something that you found other people who, were having the same struggles and thought, hey, why don't we create a cookbook? Or I guess, what was the crux of why you wanted to focus on specifically plant-based Jewish food?
Because I felt that I didn't want my food choices to separate me from the community. And so, and I think more and more people are, they want to, they want to have a healthy life. They want to feel personally healthy, and they want to contribute to the health of our planet. And they want to, celebrate Jewish holidays. They want to be in the community. So it's a way to make both possible.
So you kind of talked a little bit, but I'll reiterate a little bit is, what is the overall goal, if there is a specific one, for Jewish Food Hero? Is it to provide these plant-based options so anyone can have them? Is there a bigger conversation you're hoping to come out of this? What are the main goal or goals of what started as a blog and now has become a number of books and a number of many different wonderful things that you're working on currently under the name Jewish Food Hero?
So I think my goal is to make plant-based foods a regular part of our daily and holiday eating patterns to improve our mental and physical health and help our environment. That's the goal. And then, that's a good question. Because in my last book, I talked about like the values, the Jewish values that you can honor by eating more plant-based food.
Sure.
And I think, but the thing is like every person comes to food with a different need, a different hope. And I think that you can find a lot of things in this decision to eat more plant-based. But one of the other part of it is that I think that, this is sort of to your next question, but that you do not have to be a vegan all the time. You don't have to, really care about your physical health. Doesn't have to be your priority, or even you don't have to be really that into environmental thing, and you can still eat plant-based food and get a lot of benefit out of it.
So,
So it's also this non-extreme attitude.
one question I was thinking about as you were talking a little bit is, and it's become an interesting question for a lot of people who are plant-based because of things like Beyond Meat and so forth.
Yeah.
Should the main focus be, or you can do both, but should the focus be on finding plant-based alternatives to meat and trying to make it as close to replication as possible? Or is it about creating new recipes and new things, but have that kind of allure to it of whatever the previous thing is? So it's been interesting seeing the divide in people who, feel strongly pro or against plant-based substitutions for things that are meat versus ones who want to be more either creative and kind of bring in new cultures and new type of food and cuisine. So I'm curious, with the many different types of recipes, which we'll go into shortly, where do you fall on the spectrum, or is it kind of a mixture of both, do you feel?
So I think you're talking about two different priorities.
Mm-hmm.
One is a priority for health, right?
Yeah.
Like where you would say, I am going to choose to eat most of my calories every day from minimally processed plant-based foods for my health.
Right.
The second priority is I would like to eat foods that I find emotionally comforting because they remind me of the foods that I've eaten my whole life, like fake meats, fake dairy. So and it's not, people are very different, and also where they are on this path or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't, I'm not going to be telling you that like you have to just see what's going on and what are the impacts of that decision for that person.
No, that's I
right?
think fair enough. No, I think that's fair enough, and very good answers on, I think, point is well taken. That's two very different questions in many ways. So I think you answered that very well. So I always try and resist the urge to ask someone what their favorite recipe is or item is, because I feel like that's, asking a very difficult question. But I would be curious, for those who haven't yet read your work yet, and obviously you've done quite a lot of it, do you have favorite recipes or typically, non-plant-based foods that you have changed and improved?
Okay, so so last year I was working on this cookbook, Beyond Chopped Liver, 59 Jewish recipes get a vegan health makeover. And I was like really working to try to get a challah recipe, a vegan challah recipe. And I feel like I did a good job, and I love this recipe. that has two surprising ingredients that I won't tell you what they are, but it really tastes like challah and looks like challah, it feels like challah, and it doesn't have oil in it too. So that's an amazing thing.
That is a wonderful, you have to buy the book answer to that
No,
question.
you actually don't have to buy the book. You can go on the blog and you look for like it's called Absolutely the Best Vegan Challah, and you can get the recipe card for free. So you don't have to buy the book. The other recipes that I redid for that book, some of which are like a mock chopped liver, a noodle kugel, a dairy-free noodle kugel, which is sweet and peppery, a chocolate prune babka, and a dairy-free malabai pudding. I like there are a lot of recipes that I like that are kind of, they're really based on the traditional food that, you know, we our ancestors have been eating for a while.
Sure. No, I mean, those all sound delicious. And as you reminded, there are plenty of areas on the blog and stuff where people can find recipes, even though, of course, you have the wonderful books that we'll talk about a little bit more in a bit. I'm wondering what has been the positive and negative responses to Jewish Food Hero since its inception and since you've been able to expand it in such a multitude of different and positive directions. What has been the positive and negative responses to Jewish Food Hero?
So I think people have mostly been positive about, you know, the recipes, the aesthetic, like the beautiful aesthetic of it, and the non-extreme tone we hold about food choices.
Okay.
Those three things I think really appeal to people. Negative things, I was trying to think. I've only had a couple of negative experiences, but one was interesting if you want to hear about it.
Sure. If you feel comfortable with it, we're very curious.
So it wasn't this year, it was the year before, I think, but I lived in Asia for 8 years. So I had become very habituated to eating beans as a dessert,
Okay.
which is a very Asian thing to do. So I made a chocolate brownie hamantaschen, which is actually it was like you know how people make black bean brownies?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Similar idea, where you just would blend the black beans and to put it in the hamantaschen with chocolate powder and stuff. And so I put that online, and somebody was like, somebody said, "Isn't that cultural appropriation that you would do that?"
Interesting.
And I was like, "Really?" Because I've lived in Asia for 8 years, so of course I'm going to be impacted by the food. And it's like, and I was telling somebody this story, and they were like, "It's like this woman I was talking to, her mother had grown up in China, and her Jewish mother, and her mother makes matzo ball soup with soy sauce in it."
That sounds cool, actually. Huh.
So for me, I understand what the person was saying, but I also, that was some of the features about Jewish food. If Jewish people are living in, you know, all over, then the food gets impacted by what they're eating, and they always, you know, so that was interesting negative response, I guess.
No, that certainly is an interesting one, but I think to your point very well. First of all, Jews come from all over the world, so there's all different types of Jewish food, as we mentioned earlier. But I think there's a difference between appropriation and appreciation for the different food and cuisine at different places. So, I mean, I love that Humantaschen idea. I think I'm going to borrow that for next year. So that's
pretty good.
No, that's an interesting idea. I'll have to look up the recipe. That sounds really good.
The other thing is, it doesn't give you that, like, because it's bean, it gives you some protein in the cookie, so you don't have that sugar drop.
No, I'm liking the angle of the healthy Humantaschen. I'm loving that. So, but it does sound really good, in all honesty. Well, everything you said has sounded really, really good. So what projects do you have coming up for Jewish Food Hero? Do you have a book coming out? Do you have any particular projects that we should be on the lookout for?
Yes. So the new cookbook, Beyond Chopped Liver, is coming out at the end of this year, or early 2021, and it's 59 Jewish recipes get a vegan health makeover, and it's really fun. I'm like, why didn't I do that one first? But anyway, I really enjoyed that one. And then I just this week started working on feeding women in the Talmud, feeding ourselves, which is the same concept as feeding women in the Bible, but it's looking at sharing the stories of up to 50 women that are in the Talmud, and then creating recipes for them. And it's a collaborative project, and it brings me a lot of positive energy, and I learn so much, and I love these projects. And the other thing that people should know about, because they can contribute to, is this community recipe series on a blog is really taking off.
Mhm.
And it's totally fun. It started during the pandemic when everyone was at home, and I wanted to do something that was more community based. And it just feels so right for like this whole idea of Jewish Food Hero, that all these people are actually creating vegan recipes for their family, and they want to share those with the community. It's really sweet, and anybody can do it.
No, those sound like wonderful projects, and I think it's great that you're doing something where anyone can contribute to. So I think in these times, having something like that is a wonderful thing. So for anyone who hasn't or has been hesitant to have plant-based Jewish food, what would you say are reasons people should try it or consider, reconsider their outlook in regards to, plant-based Jewish food?
So I thought about your question. I'm a psychologist, so I would like to know a little bit more about why a person is hesitant to try plant-based foods.
Well,
The thing about food is like, it's so personal, right? So, and nobody wants to be told what to do, especially around like something so intimate as eating.
Well, let me throw in the example. I'll throw in two very quickly. Like, when you grow up with like a certain food item that, let's say, mother, father, grandmother, someone made, and to you that becomes the quintessential way of doing that food. And then, for some people, having something that has an alternative recipe, especially if it's, let's say, something meaty like a brisket. For a lot of people, brisket is a very Jewish food. So to have something that's like a vegan alternative for it almost sounds very just unusual or wrong in some sense. So, I mean, I'll give you that example, but another one that we'll throw into the mix is, let's say people who've traveled to other countries. I'll give a very quick example. Let's say someone goes to Ireland and has a Guinness there for the first time. And then when they try Guinness anywhere else, it doesn't taste the exact same. So for them, they don't want to try new things because they know they're not going to have that exact same flavor profile.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say it's one of those two reasons, or it's both reasons if you feel comfortable answering. For those type of individuals, is there a pathway for them to want to try, or that would be encouraged to try something more plant-based?
So I think I'll give two answers. The first one is that I think people make behavior changes either because there's some pain point for them.
Mhm.
Like, let's say that they experience health problems from diabetes or obesity or another food-based health problem. Then that person might be motivated to try plant-based food at a Jewish holiday or a Shabbat dinner because they want to feel better. And the other way that people would make behavior changes through aspirations, like somebody who thinks, you know what, the most effective thing I can do to help our environment is to make different food choices. Like I can eat a little bit less meat and less dairy. So because of my aspirations, I will try. So, and the other thing I would say is just like, there's no downside to eating more plant-based. Like it helps your personal health and it helps the environment. And I think that one of the most accessible methods that I find about this is just to simply add more plant-based dishes to every meal. And like, there's no right way or wrong way to enjoy more plant-based foods. Like you don't have to identify as vegan. You don't have to identify as plant-based. You don't have to abstain from animal products 100% of the time to enjoy more plant-based foods. You just have, you can serve plant-based foods alongside meat or dairy,
Mhm.
and everybody benefits from more options on the table.
I think that's a wonderful message. So the $1 million question, which is going to be one of my last questions, is of course, for anyone who wants to find Jewish Food Hero, who wants to find your books, who wants to find the blogs, where are places that people can search for you and find you?
So you can go to the Jewish Food Hero website and sign up for the newsletter. And every 2 weeks, sometimes I'm a little bit late, but I usually send out all the recipes that have been published on the blog and other like things from the shop and special promotions that we're doing. And you can also look for that challah recipe and download that recipe card from there. So that's one place. The other place is on Instagram. I usually share like photos of food, or I always share the community recipes and stuff like that. Those are and Facebook too. I do that on Facebook too. So those three places. Pinterest we do a lot too, but it's not really about connecting with. It's about connecting with the aesthetic.
Sure. Sure.
But that's also really fun. You can collect all the recipes on the boards and stuff.
And I know you have the book coming up that you said was going to be potentially the end of this year or beginning next year. For your other cookbooks, do they mainly go to the website? Is it available really anywhere like Amazon and places, or where can they find those?
So all of the cookbooks, even the one that's coming out in this end of this year, are on Amazon. So if you just search for Jewish Food Hero, you'll see all of them.
Fantastic. So, Kenden, I want to thank you so much for answering my questions. I think we got a chance not only to learn about Jewish Food Hero, but a little bit about just Jewish food in general and the different ways of looking at it and what it could look like for many people. So for those of you out there who are watching this, I want to say I hope you stay safe, stay healthy, and then I hope you stick around after we're done. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me and for asking such good questions.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful day, and everyone watching, have a wonderful day as well.